Welcome to OKState Daily. Casey Porter here. So glad that you decided to tune in. Fans, today we have a very, very, very special guest, player in 08 and 09 for Oklahoma State football. He's played every sport on earth. He's almost been in the Olympics. He got to work out at Lake Placid, and now he hosts a podcast for Oklahoma State. Nathan Gilsleider, you've done just a little bit of everything to this point, haven't you?
Yeah. I'm the jack of all trades, the king of nothing, I guess.
Crazy day, huh?
Yeah.
These days aren't fun. Hey, it had to happen, but they're not fun.
Yeah, that's it, right? That's, we all knew that change was obviously needed, but it's never fun when you think on a personal level what has to happen for that to take place. So,
yeah, it was just a tough season. So, okay, so let's talk about your Bleav in OKState podcast. You and Justin Southwell over there. Tell us where we can find it and tell us all about that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you. Anywhere you can find podcasts, we're on. We obviously do a YouTube, and then Justin will link it out on everywhere else you can find it. But we do kind of what you do, right? We like to look at what Oklahoma State is and does, and we usually do a couple a week, kind of breaking down past game and then the next game, looking at some stuff like that. So we try to keep an even keel. A lot of people like to hit hyperboles, but
sure.
I think a little bit probably because we both were a part of the program. You realize that the consistency matters, and fans can't make hires or fires, and just trying to pull through a little bit and kind of show them maybe a thought process outside of kind of what they're thinking maybe.
So it has to be an interesting dynamic to you. There's nobody that Mike Gundy loves more than his walk-ons, right?
That's
you were
right.
a walk-on at Oklahoma State, so I'm sure you guys had just a tremendous relationship together. So first of all, hearing the criticism, I'm sure that pisses you off to begin with. And then second of all, you probably didn't get to see parts of his personality that people talk about.
Yeah, no, that's the truth. It's tough, because you hold somebody in such high regard because you've seen what he's done and what it took for him to get to where he was. I mean, I was fortunate enough because of some of the journey that I've had that I stayed connected to the university, and they allowed me to go up there and train in the off seasons whenever I was trying to do the bobsled thing. And Coach Glass is one of my favorite people.
Nice.
Yeah. So he's one of my favorite people of all time. But, I think number one, to your point, there's a big misconnection, as you know, from people that played high school sports and they're like, hey, I love my football coach. He was my history teacher. He was this. When you get to this level, it's CEO, it's business, and so you're no longer like, hey, you just walk into coach's office and, hey, you doing, big guy? Like, that's not how that works. And especially whenever he was no longer the OC and the quarterback's coach, he removed himself from a layer of that. Mm-hmm. And so, that's different. And like you said, Coach Gundy always gave us as walk-ons everything he could at the time. It's way different now, but every opportunity he could to give us per diem, or he could, if you were on the travel roster like I was, you got everything. The only thing at the time that I didn't get, obviously, besides the scholarship for that, was the meals weekly. But if you were on the travel roster, you got meals on the weekends, you got all the stuff. So, I was very fortunate in that regard. So, for me, my parents went to Kansas State, and so you had Bill Snyder, who was the king of walk-ons, and that was my other option coming from baseball, and so I ended up at Oklahoma State. But Coach Gundy, obviously, he loves the walk-on. Yeah,
you didn't play football till like late in your career, did you?
Yeah, no, college was the first time I put a chin strap on.
So you didn't even play your senior year in high school? Okay.
No, I went to a really small school, and so.
Well, why in the hell did you decide to walk on?
Well, because I was dumb enough to think I could.
Okay.
I was very fast, and I was 6'3" and left-handed, and I was starting to actually grow into my body a little bit, and I just come off a rotator cuff and labrum surgery that ended my baseball career. So I was a pitcher and center fielder, and I couldn't throw anymore. I mean, it just, there's no juice on it. And so I had a really good talk with my coach at the time. And I had originally signed to play basketball and baseball in junior college. And I was just like, best case scenario, you go play overseas for a couple years and then you come back home and what do you got? And so he's like, go do something that you never thought of. And I said, hey, let's go play some football. I've always wanted to do it. I never had a chance. And he's like, you've got the size for it. He actually played. He was the center fielder for the national championship baseball team at OU.
Oh, nice.
And so he had all those connections. And he was like, man, he's like, there's guys like you all the time. Like, go give it a go. You never know. So yeah, I did.
So let me get this right. Okay. So you went to college to play baseball and basketball at the collegiate level.
Yep.
You ended up playing Division I football. Mm-hmm. Then when you got done with that, you ended up being on the Team USA bobsleds team, and were like right there to make the Olympics, right?
Yeah, 300ths of a second from going to the Olympics. But yeah, that's yeah. In a short synopsis, that's how it goes. You have some injuries, close some doors for you, and you just try to keep going as long as you can.
Yeah, so I would imagine whenever you hear people complain or make excuses or, hey, we can't do this, that probably doesn't go very far with you, does it?
No, I don't accept that. And I've got 3 little boys, and I'm trying to impart that one in too. So we're doing it.
Yeah. So you made it very clear that you think that Mike Gundy, of course, that both coordinators have been removed. Yep. You think Mike Gundy is still the man to get this turned around, or at least at the very least, he should be given the opportunity to try to fix this.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, very much. I trust is earned in raindrops and lost in buckets, right? And so that bucket got kicked over this year. There's no doubt about it. But you can't just throw out the past 18 years of, Iowa State had their first 10-win season in the history of their program this year. I mean, how many times has Mike done that? How many times has Coach done that? That we take for granted because we're used to it and the consistency that he's provided. But just throwing him out because of this and not giving him an opportunity to adapt. Yes, he's been very slow to adapt. There's no doubt about it. That's obvious, but he's more than earned the right.
Which is good and bad at times.
That's right. I think there's a fine line between consistency and complacency, right?
That's right. Exactly.
And I think we're on the wrong side of it right now.
Yes.
But I think, listen, he's going to say, as he's a very good PR person, he outside of every now and then when he slips up.
I was going to say he can be.
That's right. But he's going to tell you what he wants you to hear, regardless of what is actually happening behind the scenes. Goodness, guys, and I'm sure you're well aware, the things that go on in meetings and are said in meetings, and the fervor that he talks about with, and that's different than what he says at the podium. So, so I don't think that part of it's lost. It's just whether it's not the job he signed up for 25 years ago, right? It's a completely different game. And, Mac Brown just said the same thing when he gracefully, left North Carolina. When he had his conversation with his AD, that was what they both came to was, hey, this is not the game that I started coaching for him, 40 years ago.
Sure.
It's completely different. And the same for Coach Gundy. They're from the same cloth, him and Dabo Sweeney and the coach at Iowa State, and even the coach at Baylor. They're very much the same in what they do. And there's been a couple that have been able to say, hey, I've got to get on or get out. And Coach Gundy's there right now. And so, from my opinion, he's more than earned the opportunity to get on. And if he decides it's not, then we make that decision. But there's too many variables. It's too easy to turn into programs that have much more money and tradition than even Oklahoma State, like a Florida or Nebraska, or you see these schools that are struggling to find that guy. That's the hard part, is finding that guy.
Yeah, right.
And the easy part is adapting and
Sure.
finding ways to make that work. So That's my stance. I just, too many people are emotional in what has happened this year because it has been embarrassing at times, quite frankly. But in my opinion, he's more than earned the opportunity to say yes. Yeah. But, that comes with strings when he says yes. There's no doubt about it.
Sure. So, Coach Gundy's a guy that loves challenges. I mean, you give him a challenge, that's like when he's at his best, right? Because he's trying to solve the puzzle, and, he kind of feels like he's backed into the corner, right? So is this one of those situations to where this is a challenge to him, or is he staying because he feels like OSU needs him more now than ever because of all the changes?
I think a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think the challenge, I think there's no way that he would have agreed to fire both of his coordinators if he wasn't up for that challenge. That is a massive overhaul. I mean, you're talking about somebody that loves consistency and loves knowing, hey, this coach is here, this coach is here, this coach is here. I have this plan. I know we're on the same page.
And loves his assistants, to be honest with you.
No, very much so, right?
Yes.
I mean, and prides himself in
Yes.
staying away and letting them do what they need to do. That's out the window, right? This is back to the Coach Gundy whenever I was there and was trying to make all the changes and implement what he had built. Because if you're not up for that, you don't fire both coordinators. And, we don't know who they're bringing with them, what they're allowed to do yet. But you don't make that decision if you're not up to grind it out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my take on that. I think the easy way would be, keep done and see what happens. But whether his hand was forced or not, which I'm sure to a certain extent it was, he had to make the decision to continue without both of those coaches.
He did. And so the recruiting is going to change. We know that just from the transfer portal. I mean, we saw where Jackson Arnold is transferring today from OU after really having a really good second part of the season. So the transfer portal is crazy. NIL is crazy. So needless to say, there is going to be at least a certain type of pivot that Coach Gundy is going to have to make in his recruiting practices. How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I think number one of the things I heard Coach Prime say a couple weeks ago when they asked him about his recruiting philosophy, and I know it's different, but one thing I really liked that he said is if you're coming here as a freshman, I'm going to take small classes, because if you're coming here as a freshman, I'm telling you, you're going to have an opportunity to play within the first 2 years. Mm-hmm. And if you're not, we don't want you. And then I'm going to go hit the portal hard. I mean, I think that's something in a philosophy change ways that we're going to have to adapt as a university, because what Coach Gundy has done so much better than 99% of coaches is take those guys that middle of the road recruiting wise, give me 2 years with them and coach glass. And then by year 3, they're ready to really start producing for us. That's no longer, you can't do that. The guys are going to leave. The guys are going to get upset. Too many moving parts now. So you're going to see a lot more, I think, from Oklahoma State perspective, going after a lot more production at the college level, whether it be, D2, which goodness gracious, there's plenty of good players out there. We watched South Dakota State came in here. They weren't athletically, imbalanced. There's a lot of good players at those levels.
Good linemen and that kind of thing.
Absolutely, right? And so you find those guys, I think was what the philosophy is probably going to end up changing to for Oklahoma State and a majority of college football.
How do we fix this contract thing? I mean, I think even the most loyal of Gundy fans has to think this is not good for Oklahoma State University. Yeah,
it's not. I think there's their Board of Regents meeting coming up on Friday morning, I believe. So, who knows what that looks like? That could be part of it as well. I really do think the coach had to convince the president and those individuals that he was up for this to continue doing this, because, whether that mean giving up some of the rollovers and things like that. As I understand it, his buyout is a 5-year rollover, and you pay out 75% of that. So we're looking at about close to $30 million right now.
And it goes up every year.
Right. And so I don't think the university is not going to let you hold them at ransom if you're not willing to change and adapt and do what is required. So I would assume some kind of change here from that standpoint, because, Coach Holder, love him or hate him or whatever, one of the things that he constantly pushed back on at Coach Gundy was, recruiting metrics, getting the guys in, doing things that he probably didn't want to do. And without some checks and balances, that's kind of gone off askew, it appears. And so I would imagine that Coach and the AD and president are probably trying to get some of those checks and balances back in order to hold the feet to the fire, I guess, and think of a better term. But and I think that's
accountability.
Well, that's it, right? I think that's really what it comes down to. Coach Gundy has always prided himself on accountability within his programs from a player standpoint. If you're accountable, you show up, you do the right things, you're going to play, and we're going to put you in a position. If you don't, you're out. Same thing needs to be for the coaches, and that's obviously what's happened with the firing of Coach Dunn and Coach Nardo.
So the 105 scholarships, that has to hit home to you, because that means a Nathan Gilsleider would not exist at Oklahoma State anymore, right? And I've communicated with several different families that they know their son's getting ready to get nixed off of the Oklahoma State roster. It is a sucky deal. So, I mean, talk about that.
Yeah, it's terrible. You know, I think one of the things that I push back a lot on here lately is that the reason why people love college football is because it's different than the NFL.
Yeah, right.
And now that we're coming so close to the same thing, you're going to lose a lot of the things you love. And this is one of those things. And, you know, what kids, even, you know, what some schools were doing even with preferred walk-ons was just essentially giving them the NIL that would cover their scholarship money, essentially. Even that is amazing opportunity for kids, because I know, you know, we can all think of countless walk-ons that have gone on to even, you know, have long careers on Sunday. You think of Jordy Nelson, you think of, you know, Little Stoops there in Norman. He was a fantastic player. And Blake Jarwin at Oklahoma State. You know, there's those type of guys that are going to miss out on the opportunity. Now, I will say, on the other hand, it's going to be a bottom-down effect where you're going to see a lot of these. I don't know. I think even like a school like UCO here in Oklahoma City is really going to benefit from a lot of what's happening. And the portal, as much as I don't enjoy it, and I think there needs to be a lot fixed.
Sure. Regulations.
Yeah, but I think some of these guys are still going to get opportunities. It's just going to not be at the level that you thought you should be at or wanted to be at. Now,
all right,
as we know, put yourself in the portal after a year. You go ball out at UCO, or you go ball out at NSU or South Dakota State or wherever it may be. You go do your thing. There's been shown that you can definitely find an opportunity. And, you know, a lot of these kids that end up putting themselves in the portal are getting bad advice, and they don't understand that, you know, once you go in there, you're not probably as good as you thought you were. You know, your aunt or grandma tells you are, and it's usually not a great place for you. So, yeah, this 105 thing is going to stink. It's going to change really the way that it all operates. It's already operates as a business, but even more so now. I think once you start doing this, in the $20.5 million that's going to be approved probably in around April by the judge for revenue sharing. Listen, you start getting paid by the university, you will start being cut by the university. You will start being, hey, this is a 1-year contract, you know, or this is a 2-year you know, these type of things are now in play. And right now,
everything's transactional.
Right now, the player has all the power. That's not going to last forever, guys. Right. You know, like this is big money. That doesn't last very long. You got the upper hand at the moment, but that's not going to last very long.
Yeah. So I think we're going to the CEO model, the GM model. And the interesting part of it is I think some of the coaches like Coach Gundy that have been around for a while, they're going to want a football person, right? They're going to want somebody who played it. They're going to want somebody who knows what a football player looks like. And I'm not exactly sure in this model that's the exact type of person you need in that role. You almost need the numbers cruncher, the guy that can compare the salaries versus, you know, you have your football people that say, here's the guys you go get, but then the GM compares that to like the number figures. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of people fit that role the best, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like we just saw Andrew Luck take over the role at Stanford. I know Kenyatta here at Oklahoma State is somewhat filling that role right now from the NIL side, but you know that, and OU just hired somebody that was with AT&T, and I think he was on the board for
right.
PGA
That's what
Tour.
I'm talking about,
right. And so and Justin and I just talked about this. You're going to have, you know, I said, hey, if I was Dr. Schrum or the AD, you know, Chad Weiberg, I would be on the phone with the Baltimore Ravens or the Philadelphia Eagles and say, hey, can I come in and sit down and talk and see how you guys are doing things? You know, how do you pick your people? Do you have a lower level person here that you think would, you know, is ready, but you just don't have a spot for? Like, to your point, like that's what you're going to have to. You're going to have to start having allocation talks. Like you've had scholarship allocations in the past. Now I've got $5 million for 3 quarterbacks, or I've got $2 million for my wide receiver room, or you know what I mean. To your point, this is what it is now, and we're going to have to adapt as a university and find that individual, because I think it's going to come down to in numbers. In a school like Oklahoma State, you're going to have to play money ball. You're going to have to find out ways to make those dollars stretch, and that's just the way we're going to have to do it to be successful. And Coach Gundy's done an amazing job of that in a different realm, but it's just going to have to adapt.
He has. Although I think the money part of it's what's going to melt his brain. I think he's going to do a great job pivoting to the type of player we can get out of the portal that will come here, but it's going to be the money aspect of it that just I think that's going to be the worst part of it for him.
Well, I agreed. I think honestly, I think that's what he's struggling with right now. He's still, when you look at, in my opinion, when you look at what happened this season, I think one of the issues is that he and the coaching staff all agreed that, hey, the guys that were here last year deserve the money because they were here last year.
Right.
Not because they were the most talented person that we could get. That's
a pivot they're going to have to make.
Right? I think so. And I think you saw that evident with the offensive line. Like, I hate talking negatively about them, but it's like, they performed very poorly this year, and especially in the run game. And when you go back and look at last year's run grades and things like that, they weren't great. We were just catching people off guard, and Ollie was getting off schedule and doing some things himself. They got to have the foresight to see that and be like, hey, Alan, I really appreciate what you did for us. You won our last Bedlam game. You'll go down forever. We just don't have a spot for you moving forward. You know what I mean? Like, those are the conversations you're going to have. It's unfortunate, but that's what it is now. Yeah.
So I actually talked to Billy Gasparino about a week or so ago, who is the assistant GM for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And he was a great player there at the end of the 90s for Oklahoma State. Actually, he made the Hall of Fame. He got inducted 10 years ago in 2014 at Oklahoma State. So director of baseball operations is what he is. He's basically the second guy at the Dodgers. So what's really cool about like organizations like that OSU is going to have to incorporate is that they don't acquire players based on what they've done in the past. Mm-hmm. They acquire players based on what their metrics are telling them they will do in the future, which is exactly what you're saying there. It's literally a totally different way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I think that's going to you're going to have that mind shift now, right? I mean, I think some schools have beat Oklahoma State to the punch there, but to your point, that's exactly what's going to have to happen. You're going to have to, let's say for instance, unfortunately at Tulsa with their coaching change, it seems like about their entire roster is in the portal. Yeah. They have that freshman who was the, freshman player of the year, wide receiver and stuff like that. Like, hey, that's a guy you're going to have to go try to get rather than let's keep our guy that's been here for 3 years that hasn't played yet because he's done everything the right way. I'm sorry. Like, that's just not what we do anymore. We acquire talent based off of what you think we can do for us now. Yep. And it stinks because college football, that everybody loved about, like, hey, here's the guy that's been here for, the Dylan Stoners, the guys like that we fall in love with because they Josh Coopers, right? The Brennan Presleys, these guys that have come here and done that. Those are going to be fewer and far between. And it's going to be all about, what have you done for me lately? And here's a 2-year contract and we'll see what happens. Yeah, absolutely. So where is Oklahoma State's place in college football right now? Can we maintain the excellence we've had in the last 2 decades? That question is going to be answered by Coach Gundy, right?
Good question, right?
That is. I think
I'll let you know in 5 years.
Here's what I'll say is I think Oklahoma State is in no worse position than anybody outside, maybe let's say the top 15 in NIL.
Good point.
Now, whether what we do with that's completely up to our administration and Coach Gundy. Our facilities are top 20 in the nation. I mean, that's just the way it is. Our stadium isn't, is it 100,000? No, but guess what? Everybody that's ever played at Boone Pickens Stadium will tell you how loud it gets and how tough it is and how good of an environment, you know what I mean? And so, we're not lacking there. Our athletic department has done very well in all sports. We do a great job of supporting Oklahoma State. From what I understand, the NIL is even better than what some people would come to believe because of how Coach Gundy has utilized it. Mm-hmm.
Same with recruiting dollars in the past. It's almost like that's shifted.
Yes. Right. And then you look at just revenue, where Oklahoma State's continually been one of the few departments that actually does get revenue out of the football program. And, and our basketball program's been so down. If we can get anything out of basketball program revenue wise, I think you're going to be in real good shape. So we have every opportunity. We're in an automatic bid league, to get into the playoff. Who knows how that'll change with the way that the Big 12 or the Big 10 and SEC are trying to squeeze everybody out. But as of right now, we've got a seat at the table and we have everything in front of us to go make that happen. So I think we can. It's just whether or not we make the changes in fast enough.
I know fans are excited because there's change and nobody's going to disagree if that change needed to happen. But it just makes me so nervous because it's so much change. And it's like, okay, well, I've said this many times. The easy part is just to walk in and say you're fired. That's the easiest part. So my question is, now what? I mean, to make this make any kind of sense, you got to go find people that immediately are automatically way better than what you already have, right?
Absolutely. I think Coach has talked about it in the past, how it gets really annoying that I have to hire a new coordinator every 3 years. Guess what? That means you're doing a good job.
Yes, right.
We have not had a coordinator or position coach leave or been asked, at least publicly, to leave in I don't know how long. That's not good.
It's not.
That's not good for a thought processes inside the same room. You have the same people inside the same room.
Jim Knowles.
Right. Exactly. You're right. Right. That's a good point, Coach Knowles. But you need to continue to have fresh blood in there, and that's something I think we've been lacking. So. He needs to be willing to go and get those coordinators, because you brought up Coach Knowles. The numbers that were thrown around that Oklahoma State was trying to match, every school besides 10 of them wouldn't have been able to beat us.
Sure.
So if we want somebody, Oklahoma State can keep them. I think that is something that needs to leave our vernacular as Oklahoma State fans is, well, we don't have enough money to keep our coaches.
The inferiority complex?
Yeah. Hey, Coach Gundy's making $7.5 million. You know how many, that's top 15 money.
Right.
So yes, we can. If we do get our coaches, we can keep them. We offered Coach Knowles well over $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
If you do your job and it's, impressed upon the Board of Regents, we have shown that Oklahoma State has the money and the funds to keep you.
Yeah.
So I think that no longer needs to be a thing. Can we compete in NIL wise? Well, that's up to the fans. Who's to know what is going to happen in the coming years with this settlement and the $20.5 million and what NIL will actually mean? I know they're trying to redefine that a lot. Mm-hmm. So maybe that'll even be brought back down closer to earth. But to your point, there's no reason that we can't compete with. I'm trying to think just even in the Big 12.
Anybody outside of Utah, maybe, or BYU? Yeah,
right. BYU, right, because they have that global brand, Notre Dame-ish type money.
Yeah, they do.
TCU's got a lot of money there in Dallas-Fort Worth. But, outside of that, Oklahoma State has the ability. We need somebody to squeeze the orange a little harder, and I hope maybe this was the reset that Coach Gundy needed to do that.
Hey, before we get out of here, tell us all about your bobsled. I know you trained at Lake Placid. Had you ever heard of the Miracle on Ice?
Funny enough, my dad used to tell me about that. My dad is born on the East Coast and lived there. And then obviously that movie came out and I really got into it, with Kurt Russell. That was a great one. But so being there in Lake Placid, I was up there quite a bit, got out on the ice a little bit, saw the locker room, did the whole thing. And they hold, national hockey tournaments up there, as you would imagine. Yeah. And so we'd go up there and go watch and do that. A lot of times the hockey teams themselves would stay at the training center too. And so, it was really cool. There's so much history there. You walk around and see everything. And, that's still the track you use from the 80 Olympics that we would train on and so forth. So Lake Placid's a special place. I really enjoyed my time there. It's a lot of fun.
The Miracle on Ice announcer, Al Michaels,
mm-hmm.
that very next year, he was the one who did the play-by-play on the Oklahoma State Gator Bowl when Barry Hanna's helmet came off. I don't know why I know that.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
How did you get involved with all that bobsled? I'm just curious. And then tell us about, your trials and how you almost made the Olympics.
Yeah. So at Oklahoma State, I had a degree in what is it called now? And it's changed a little bit, but the new human performance facilities taking over kind of that degreed program. So that's essentially where I was at.
Okay.
And part of what I had to do, I thought, after I was done, maybe I was going to do some coaching or strength conditioning. And so Coach Glass let me go down there with them for a couple months. And as a part of me finishing my degree program, I had to go externship. And so I did that at Michael Johnson Performance Center.
Oh, wow.
In McKinney, Texas.
Like that Michael Johnson.
That Michael Johnson.
Okay.
And so Lance Walker, who is now the head of the degree program here at Oklahoma State that's starting the Human Performance Center, was the head of that then. And so as you can imagine, they have all kinds of track athletes, all kinds of NFL, all kinds of everything you can think of. I mean, ballet dancers from the UK, Jamaican sprinter. I mean, literally anybody you can imagine coming down because they want Michael Johnson's name on it. And,
of course.
And so there was a guy there named Johnny Quinn who was in and out of the NFL, CFL, but he was in NFL shape, but he wasn't, his NFL career was done. But they were like, hey, go do, if you're still wanting to do something, you should try bobsled. And he's like, what are you talking about? So he ended up making the Olympics to Russia, Sochi. And I called him after that and I said, hey man, like, how was it? What did you have to do? And he told me kind of what he had to do. And it's a trial process. I flew out to Colorado Springs. There's a training center there and they run you through a gauntlet, sprints, lifts, the whole deal. And then you get asked to, keep moving on. And then you go to Lake Placid and then you go get on ice and it moves pretty quickly. But yeah, that's how it all started.
Adrenaline rush, I'll bet.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You played in the Arena League too, didn't you?
I did. I played in the Arena League.
Yeah. That was wild.
In Tulsa and that was a lot of fun. Yeah. So, that was a blast to keep playing again. I played with several OSU guys, Hubert Anium, Isaiah. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, Isaiah Anderson.
Yeah. Hubert's fast.
Hubert's a great athlete. So there's a handful of us still from OSU that played on that team too. So that was a lot of fun.
Last question about OSU before we move on to Claremore Christian Academy there where you went to high school. Mm-hmm. Okay, you were on the field in 2009 when Oklahoma State did not make it past midfield at OU. I'm still pissed about it if you can't tell. It still chaps my ass. Okay. Yeah. So in your opinion, Nathan Gilsleider, go ahead and throw whoever you need to under the bus. Yeah. We won't tell anybody, right? Yeah. If Brandon Whedon comes into that game, do we win?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
I definitely think we're it's a shootout because that wasn't a great OU team.
No.
And from my understanding and after talking to Zach and doing that, Zach took that massive hit against Texas Tech.
Yes.
And he'd actually been battling shoulder injuries throughout the year that nobody really knew about. And so some of the balls that weren't coming out of his hand properly, he was battling. And so after that, we had the Colorado game where Brandon came to life and saved us on senior night. And then Zach went into coach's office and told him he wanted it. Like, hey, this is my last game. You're not taking this from me. We're doing this deal. And so coach said, okay, but, you have to tell me if you can do it. And Zach said, yeah. So, Coach Gundy is always going to reward the guy that has been there and done that and been in battle for you. And so he gave it to Zach, and Zach just physically was not where he needed to be to win that football game. Kendall Hunter was out. We had Keith Toaston as our running back at that time, and Dez was suspended, and I think we were down another wide receiver. So we were on. It was a bad situation. So they knew. And also, by the way, I'll let you on this nugget too. Is they had our signals? OU did.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because I was one of the signal guys. And so I'm sitting there and the defensive line is looking at me. And I was like, oh boy. And so I told coach, I told coach because something happened. He looked over at me and I was like, coach, they've got our signals. And he's like, we can't change it in the middle of the third quarter. Like, what are you supposed to do? So anytime we went on a second count or a count and look, the defensive line looked when our offensive line looked. And I was like, that's not good.
No,
that's not good. But yeah, Brandon was a special talent. Arm wise, he definitely would have given us a shot there.
Yeah. I bought a ticket from OU fan for $35 and I sat in that north end zone and on the west side, and every OU fan was like, we're going to be nice to you today because you're getting ready to kick our ass. Well, nope, that didn't happen. Right?
It did not, unfortunately.
Okay, Claremore Christian Academy, man, you were so proud to be from there.
Yep.
Tell us all about that.
Yeah. So grew up in Claremore, Oklahoma, from that really small school. So that's kind of why I was able to play everything. One of the things that kids don't get to do anymore these days. I captain on the soccer team, captain on the basketball team, captain the baseball team, the whole deal. So that was a lot of fun, and that really allowed me to do what I love, which is everything. And I think there's a lot of the reason why I was able to do what I was able to do in my career was because I had such a wide base of athletic skill that, like, hey, have I ever bobsled in my life? Absolutely not. But I'm athletic enough. I know how to do this. If I can run, if I can, you know what I mean?
You've learned how to compete.
Exactly. Same thing with football. Like I can shut up and learn what I'm supposed to do. Sure. And, unfortunately injuries derailed a lot of what I wanted to do, but it helped me prepare, and it gave me the ability that a lot of people don't get to do everything.
Yeah. I bet it drives you nuts when these kids are specializing when they're like 8.
Oh my goodness. It is an epidemic.
Yes, it is.
I'm sure you're probably the same way as I was. Hey, you go out in the afternoon and you play baseball with your buddies, and the next day you play pickup football, and then the next day you're out in the driveway shooting hoops, and it's basketball season. Okay, that's what I do. And so, it's a shame because kids need multifaceted athletic tasks, because it really hinders them as they get older.
Yes. One thing I'd say to that is, if it's baseball season, do not play pickup basketball.
There you go.
It's not if, it's when you're going to turn the ankle.
That's it.
And your baseball coach is going to have no sympathy for you whatsoever.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Hey, Nathan Gilsleider, this has been a wonderful honor to get to speak with you. Any final thoughts here?
No, I appreciate you having me, and I hope everybody understands, that Oklahoma State and Coach Gundy has always got the best in mind, whether it comes out or stuff like that. I think we kind of get caught up in emotions a lot of times as fans, because we want the best and you want it right now. But just trust the process, and these new hires, let's see who they are and give them the benefit of the doubt, no matter where they come from. It's all right.
No doubt. One last time, where we can find Bleav in OKState and everywhere you're at now.
Yeah, Bleav in OKState. You can find us on YouTube. It's the easiest way. And then obviously on Spotify, Apple Music, anything like that, we'll be up there too. So we appreciate everybody and appreciate you for having me. And hopefully we'll get some more news by Friday and see what this Board of Regents meeting's about.